What's up, Menace soldiers on the Alliance, and welcome back to the video. So today we're going to be doing a little brief review and kind of like an idea of what I want to see in the future for The Mandalorian. So today I just actually watched Mandalorian episode 3, so it's nice and fresh in my mind. So pretty much first thoughts right away. I think it's really solid. I think there is less to do in this episode, but I think what this episode is mostly to focus on is showing that our Mandalorian is more human than we ever saw. And what I mean by this is that the previous episodes showed that he was a hunter and he has ruthless tendencies. But this was the first episode where we finally see that, like, wait, there is a human being under there. You know, this is someone who actually cares for this little baby Yoda. And I think that's really cool. I'm really glad to see that. And so far, we've never actually seen a bunch of Mandalorians together. I mean, the previous episode showed a bunch of Mandalorians together, but this episode actually showed all the Mandalorians initially looking like they kind of don't like each other. But in the very end, we kind of see them all come together in a firefight. And they actually protect him, protecting the baby. And I think that's a really cool little thing, because initially you don't exactly know how they feel about each other. It almost seems like they're all kind of hunting each other. But in the end of the episode, it shows, like, hey, when push comes to shove, doesn't matter how much we don't like someone or how much someone doesn't like me. When push comes to shove, we're Mandalorians, we're brothers, and we stick together. And I think that's a really cool concept to send out for their characters because, like I stated, I mean, in Legends, we've seen Mandalorians before, but in actual canon, we've never seen something like this. I guess you could say technically Rebels did this, but that was different because they were all kind of a clan. Where now it seems more like they are, and in this series, it seems like they're all kind of their own nomads that just kind of all hang out because they don't have anywhere else to go. So I think that's a really cool concept, the idea that they all work as one. You know, doesn't matter how much they hate each other, in the end of the day, they are a team, and I think that's really cool. So like I said, as far as story goes, there's not actually much going on in this episode, but this episode is mostly just to give us a reason for why he would get his armor, and for him to get the baby back. So I think that's really cool that that's at least something. I know there's people online who are going to look at this episode and really not like it because, like I said, as far as story and adventure, there really isn't much. This episode is pretty much just to keep the characters together and allow them to go on further adventures in the future. So that's pretty much what the reason for this episode is. This episode isn't meant to blow anyone's mind. It's not going to start something fresh. Do you know what I mean? But what it is going to do, it's going to allow for more adventurous episodes later on. So I'm okay with that, especially since episode 1 and 2, and I did reviews on those if you want to check those out. 1 and 2 feel like they're kind of like the same episode. I think if anything, people are going to mostly complain about the length of these episodes, but I'm okay with their being short because I don't like when stories overdo the length, and I feel like this show does perfect amount with the time it's given, so I'm okay with that. So instead of a Walking Dead situation where something big happens in the beginning of the season and then nothing else happens the rest of the season, then they have a mid-season break which something big happens, and then the season comes back and then something big happens at the end of that season, and everything else just kind of feels like filler. Like, that's what The Walking Dead does, like I said. I'm okay with them actually having more content in less time. I know a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people like to sit down and for a straight hour and just watch like a full story, and that's okay. But I like the idea that these are actually like chapters to a bigger story, and that's kind of what this is. You know, it's not like here's a story, here's a story, here's a story, here's a story. It's more saying like here's a chapter to a story, here's the next chapter to that story, here's the next chapter to that story, here's the next chapter to that story, and so on and so forth, and what have you. So I'm okay with that type of narrative for the story because I'd rather have them serve the story instead of just throwing filler in because they need to pad out the runtime. So I'm okay with that. So now for a little bit of a breakdown on this episode's story. Little recap. Episode 1 and 2 are kind of like its own section of story. Chapter 1 and 2 are kind of like episode 1, I guess you could say, and then episode 2 would be this one. And this one kind of feels like it's the beginning of another episode. So what happens in this one is the Mandalorian delivers the baby to the Imperials. The Imperials give him a bunch of Beskar. He uses that Beskar to make new armor for himself. and he's looking all badass, and that's cool. I like that. And then he was going to leave the planet, but then he decided that he can't leave without that Baby Yoda, because that Baby Yoda is just too cute. Can't leave without that Baby Yoda. So he goes back to the Imperials, pretty much kills them all, takes the baby with him, and there's this one point where there's like this doctor, and this doctor is trying to tell him like, hey, look, I'm actually the reason why the baby is still alive. The Imperials wanted to have him killed and have him dissected or whatever, but I actually wanted to keep him alive and keep him safe. And I think that's pretty cool. I actually think that that Imperial guy is going to come back at some point, and he actually might kind of team up with them to help do whatever he was supposed to do, or help take down whatever he was supposed to do. I think that's a pretty cool and interesting idea. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'd be okay with that, I guess. So anyways, after the Mandalorian takes the baby away from the Imperials, he gets jumped by a bunch of the backyard slums, and they're all trying to kill him. When it comes down to it, he almost dies. However, his Mandalorian buddies all jump in to save him, and he gets out of there alive. And I think that was really cool. Overall, like I said, this episode isn't meant to really push the boundaries. It's meant to give a reason for better episodes later on. So I'm going to understand why people are going to complain about this episode, but ultimately I think it was pretty decent. I think it did a good job of what it was supposed to do. So that's just my opinion on this episode. So now with my review of this episode done, let us speculate. So for me, what I think is going to happen, I'm almost certain that now that the baby is off the planet, there's still going to be a bunch of bounty hunters trying to hunt down the Mandalorian. That's definitely like a thing that we're going to see. We're definitely going to see more bounty hunters hunting him down. I'm almost certain the Imperials are going to come after him. In fact, the scientist might initially come after him too. I think that the scientist is going to be forced to come after him initially. And then when they do find him, he'll actually kill the Imperials that come after him too. Like, for example, the scientist and a bunch of different stormtroopers will go to find the Mandalorian. They finally find the Mandalorian, they surround him, they're about to kill him, and then the scientist is going to shoot those Imperials and save him. So I'm pretty sure something along those lines are going to happen, and then that's when he joins up with the Mandalorian. For right now, we're kind of getting this idea that the Mandalorian is a lone wolf, but I think these next episodes are going to be slowly setting him up with a crew. I think that's what the character needs, especially considering that the Mandalorian is essentially just a blank slate. You know, we haven't really known much about him. We don't know much about his background. In this episode, we get this idea that he was almost killed by some battle droids, which is pretty cool. They did a call back to the prequels there. But we don't exactly know who he is, and we don't exactly know what type of personality he has. We know that morally he is a good person, but we don't know his personality. So we definitely need someone to be able to kind of join the crew and be able to make that personality show more, and just to kind of see the dynamics between someone who is more personality-based character compared to him, who is just more of a blank slate for the watcher to put themselves into. And the Imperial guy seems like he also has a morality to him as well. So I think that he would be a cool dynamic to throw into this this crew that they're going to be creating. And he seems like he has a decent personality that could maybe mesh well with the Mandalorian, and we can just get more out of the Mandalorian through other characters. So I think that would be pretty cool. Maybe that's just me, but that's how I feel. I know I keep saying that, but by my opinion, I think that this series is going to have, everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. So I just like to share my own and maybe convince others, but also I'm going to respect others' opinions too, because in the end of the day, people are going to love this series, and there's going to be people who aren't going to like it. I don't think there's necessarily a reason to ever hate this series. I think so far it's actually doing a really good job. But there are going to be people who are going to watch this and go, this isn't Star Wars. And that's understandable because it isn't. It's something we've never seen before. But at the same time, I like that it's kind of fresh. It's fresh in a way that is actually good. You know, this series so far has subverted my expectations, and it did it right compared to, you know, Last Jedi. But that's a video for another time. But that's it for this video, guys. Did you enjoy this episode? Do you think it was better than the last ones? Do you think that it was worse than the last ones? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think is going to happen in episode 4 and beyond? What do you think the whole plan of the Imperials actually is? Let me know in the comments below. Let's talk. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn notifications for more. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace. This one has always kind of gotten me. And this is a small thing. This isn't a big deal, but I'm just curious.
Do droids like feel pain in this universe? Because these droids definitely seem to be screaming in agony. But why? Why would they be programmed with nerves? I don't really get it. I know, just a movie, but it always just made me wonder, like, what?